Hello and welcome to this episode of Quaker. In this episode, I want to look and talk about Quaker Oats. It's an annoying one, I'm not going to lie. It's annoying because the brand Quaker Oats are just so successful. How dare they? You could argue that in the general popular culture, they are more well known than the Religious Society of Friends, aka Quakers. And so, as a Quaker, if you say to people generally of the world that you are a Quaker, they are instantly thinking, what's this got to do with Quaker Oats? Why are you not dressed like the guy in the Quaker Oats box? And things like that. So, gonna talk about it. Gonna just get rid of all of that. So, if anyone asks you or anything like that about Quakers and Quaker Oats, just send them this video and then say I don't want to talk about it anymore. Let's move on. So, first and foremost, Quaker Oats have nothing to do with Quakers and vice versa at all. So Quaker Oats were founded in 1877 in Ohio in America, and so that's obviously 220 odd years after the Religious Society of Friends was founded. And was founded by people who weren't Quakers, who there was no connection between the founders of Quaker Oats and the Religious Society of Friends at that point, and there has been no link at all. So the question must come, why on earth did they choose our name? Why did they take our name and put a Quaker on the front of it? Why did they do that to us? Well, actually, they did it because Quakers had a really good reputation. So it was a good thing. They wanted to be like us. The reason why they chose the name Quaker was because what they knew of Quakers was that they were people of integrity. And that's what they wanted their company to be like as well, to be a company of integrity. And so they thought that the Quaker values fitted in with their values of their company, and they wanted to make that connection very clear. So they made Quaker Oats. Isn't that nice? I suppose also this was at a time, so 1877, this was at a time when Quakers were still quite separate from mainstream society. They had a distinctive way of dressing, more on that later, and were more rural in terms of where they lived. And so I suppose it sort of had as well a kind of more homely and honest feel about them than maybe anything else. And so I think the company liked this idea and wanted to hearken these aspects of Quakers as well. So yeah, and then with that, what happened then is that they were actually the first breakfast cereal company to patent a logo with a character. And their character, obviously, is the Quaker Man. And for those of you, I mean, you can Google it, but even if you just type in Quaker, that man will come up in his various forms. And so you'll see what I mean. But effectively, it's a guy with sort of like a black jacket, a white kerchief, a broad rimmed hat, and there's kind of like white hair. I think it might be a wig. Don't know. And that is the logo of Quaker Oats. So why? Because obviously I don't dress like that. Why are they saying that that's how Quakers dressed? So in the 1870s, and well, actually, that was probably towards the end of when people were doing that. But for a long time, Quakers dressed in a certain way. And they did this to separate themselves, well, for quite a few reasons. First reason, to separate themselves, make them look distinctive as a group. Secondly, they did it in order to uphold their testimony of simplicity. So they didn't believe in fancy clothing, so their clothing was grey for the most part. Not black, but grey because it was cheap. And hats because, well, everyone wore a hat. Hats are great. But Quakers haven't dressed like that for ages. And yet, because the Quaker Man hasn't updated himself with us modern Quakers, I'm still asked, well, why don't you dress like the Quaker Man? There's also been illusions that the original Quaker man from the Quaker Oats logo was William Penn, who was one of the second generation Quakers and was the founder of the state of Pennsylvania in America. So, and actually, if you do look at portraits of William Penn and early logos of the Quaker man, yeah, I can kind of see it. But Quaker Oats say it's not him, but it looks quite similar. But certainly the new guy. So since 2012, they've had a new guy who looks younger, apparently to lure in younger people. I'm like, don't really see that, but it doesn't really look like William Penn at all. Maybe a younger William Penn. I don't have anything necessarily against Quaker Oats as a company. There seems to have been some controversies about things that they've done. It's been more things about uh, when cereals sometimes have free toys in there for kids. Sometimes when the toys are from films or TV shows or whatever that are quite violent, Quakers have thought, well, hang on, that's not cool. But Quakers haven't really ever tried to sue Quaker Oats or anything like that to try and, I don't know, make them change their name. Uh, I don't think that's really relevant or necessary to do. But they are a multinational company with no ties to Quakerism at all, and so I suppose it just leaves a bit of a sour taste. And plus, it then we have to deal with this sort of connection, which we have to explain, and we have to explain. No, we don't dress like that anymore. We haven't for hundreds of years, but they won't change their logo. And there are loads of companies that are multinational companies, or at least very successful companies, which do have Quaker heritage. Maybe not anymore, but I've mentioned these in my intro video. But Cadbury's, Fry's, Roundtree's, Lloyd's Bank, Barclays Bank, these are all very big names, and they actually did have Quaker heritage, but have since moved on there to make more money. But I think so. I'm not against. It's not like I'm against them because they're a big company and that's sort of not Quaker, because there are plenty of businesses that have done very well. So integrity came into the business model as well for Quaker Oats as to why they wanted to use that name. Quaker businessmen of the time were renowned for being fair in terms of their prices and not haggling. So this goes right back to the beginnings of Quakerism, where it was common to barter and to negotiate a price for anything. So that meant that people would be getting different prices for the same thing. In terms of their testimony for truth, Quaker businessmen did not do that. So they were one of the first businesses to run a model on a fixed price system. So you could send your child to the Quaker shop and know that they wouldn't get cheated out of making or cheated to pay more money than an experienced negotiator. Everyone would get the same price, which obviously is now the way that every shop runs their business. So because of this integrity in terms of their business practice, that was also something that Quaker Oats wanted to emulate. Not necessarily. Well, I don't know if they also. Well, it was a later time, so in the 1870s. So maybe fixed price was more common by then. So maybe they didn't need to do that. But the idea that they were honest businessmen was something that they wanted to emulate. So I remain quite frustrated by Quaker Oats, to be honest. I either wish they had an actual Quaker connection, or that they got rid of the image of the old-fashioned Quaker, or that maybe just another brand just overtakes it. Um, any other porridge oat brand will do. What about Scott's? Go for that instead. I don't know, and then we don't have to talk about that, and then we can just put on the Scots having to explain why they don't wear kilts all the time. But anyway, yeah, I'd be interested to hear if any of you have had to explain yourself as to why you don't wear the silly hat, or have you had any other misconceptions? For example, I know that there is a Quaker parrot. Have you ever been asked why you're not a parrot? Or are parrots all Quakers, or do you bring parrots to meet? Imagine if we brought parrots to meeting. Carnage. I also think that the football team in Darlington are known as the Quakers. And I'm sure there must be an American football team in Pennsylvania or something, or some sports team called the Quakers, surely no? Let's talk about how we've all been misrepresented by these other companies and brands wanting to use our name because we're so amazing. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you liked it, please do click on the thumbs up and the subscribe button to get more videos about Quakerism in the UK today. It really does help, and thanks once again.